The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com.
I'm very fortunate to be joined by Adam, who is also known as a member of Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast, who in the last year and two have had some extraordinary guests. I mean, I'll just name a few. We've got Eric Bischoff, you've got Maven, you've got Vince Russo, you've had Angelina Love, Victoria, just to name a few, countless others. So thank you for coming on, Adam. I really do appreciate your time.
No worries. It's been a long time coming. I know we've been talking about doing this a while, but yeah, it's good that the diaries are finally aligned.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been a big fan of your work and big fan of your podcast. I watch it every time I go to work, put it on in the car, listen to it. So it's good to finally get down and talk to you. I mean, big supporter of yours, and I know you've seen some of the guests that I've had, and I appreciate your support. So thank you for coming on. This is an honour because in the last 2 years, like I mentioned, been a big fan of your work.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a big shout out to Andy and Parker as well. They're the ones that made the Hitting the Turnbuckle doesn't happen without Andy and Parker. They're the ones that created this thing. I joined it 18 months ago, and it's taken off since then. But yeah, Andy and Parker are still the ones that are behind this beast. They're just not a part of the podcast. They've had to step away, unfortunately, but those are the two that made it happen.
Awesome, man. So let's go down memory lane. So 2 years ago, Hitting the Turnbuckle decided to do a podcast, I think, in 2022. How did that all come about? What was the ideas?
Yeah, I mean, and so, well, Hitting the Turnbuckle was a bit longer than that. I mean, it started in COVID. So, and as I mentioned, Andy and Parker were the two people behind it. So, as COVID was, we were at home. That was life. That was what we were doing. Andy had another podcast they were the Washington Redskins, but I believe they're Washington Commandos now, the NFL club. He started that. Him and Parker both, I'm not sure if Parker was a part of that particular podcast, but they had the interest of Washington, and they're obviously both interested in wrestling. So they started the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. It was like a weekly show, maybe one or two shows a week, talking wrestling. I attended, so I've known Andy actually by now about 13, 14 years. The last time I had seen him prior to me joining the podcast was TNA in the UK when Hogan and Bischoff, that was at Wembley Arena. And I remember they bought the lockdown cage. And prior to that, I'd met Andy at a Stone Cold Steve Austin sign in HMV many, many years prior. So we'd been friends a while, but I never knew about the podcast and I knew nothing. I went to Clash at the Castle, the first one. And Andy was like, "Oh, I do a wrestling podcast. Do you want to come on and share your experience about going to the Clash of the Castle? We're doing a review of it." And the first thing I said was, "You've had a wrestling podcast and not told me," because he knew that I like wrestling. So I come onto the podcast. At the end of that podcast, I said, "Look, if there's anything I can do to help going forward, just let me know." And about a month or two later, he was like, "Look, because the world is coming back to how it was, we're out more than we are in. The time zones between him and Parker in America was difficult to get the amount of content. Obviously, the content that we're trying to do was Raw, AEW, Dynamite, SmackDown, and then obviously Collision come about." But he was like, "Can you help? Like, even if it's just did a WWE stuff." So I said, "Yeah." Joined in all WWE stuff. Then I started helping out with Parker with the AEW stuff because my job's a little bit different to Andy's. Andy delivers beer to the UK, and we can't allow anyone a lot of time not to be delivering beer to the country. I have a more of an office-based role, which is where I can spend time at home. So at lunch times or in the mornings, I can bash a podcast out. I've done that, and then it just catapulted from there to what you see now.
I mean, it's just amazing. Like, just some of the guests you've had is just out of this world. You recently had opportunities with TNA. You recently had opportunities to have Lance Archer from AEW. How did they come about?
I mean, Eric, TNA was just, like you say, you promote the brand and you get an opportunity. They gave us one opportunity. I think they've seen our shows on YouTube, which, I think we've had YouTube just over a year, and I just uploaded an episode this morning, so that would take us to 665 videos, and most of those videos are actual review shows or interviews. I don't do enough snippets, and I need to do more of those. I realize that I don't do enough. I need to go through the back catalogue and start snipping stuff out. They've seen that. Obviously, you email people like Ross Foreman and people that you would know at TNA, because I know that you obviously yourself had campaigns on recently. We did, and then all of a sudden it just happened, and we actually got I think it was who did Dave? Oh, the day in the Decay. It was one of those bad days when I was actually, well, not a bad day, but I was actually at a customer meeting of we had to basically take a customer out for the evening, and I couldn't make it, so Dave jumped on and they done that one, and then next thing you know, a couple of months later, we had the system come on, and then we had Jake something, and then we had an opportunity with Campaign Sync, a bit like yourself. Great. I mean, that I think they just appreciate what we do, and we're constantly, on our socials, you'll see us promoting TNA a lot. AEW was AEW really was quite fortunate. I know a good friend of mine, a wrestler that we sponsor, Taylor James, knows Lance Archer, and been messaging Lance for on and off over a year, and it was like we had to get approval, and finally that happened via Lance, and then we got the opportunity to interview him, and who knows if that's going to happen, if there's any more going to happen going forward. I don't know yet.
If you could pick anyone from the AEW roster, who would you pick to interview if you could?
Wow, that's a tough one. For me, there is really only one, because I've got so many sort of tattoos, and that's Adam Copeland, Edge. That would be my one. I followed his career forever, pretty much since he debuted since WWE, really. But there's a lot of I've got his Rated R belt, signed by him eventually. But yeah, Adam Copeland for me would be the one if I got a chance to interview any of them.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Who's been some of your favorite people that you've interviewed over the years? I said 2 years. Man,
obviously Bischoff up there with Wyatt. But a lot of it is because of you grow up with them, so that you feel like you know them, but you grow up with them through wrestling. Bischoff won. One of the ones for me that I'll always never forget is Shane Douglas, because that guy can, if you want someone that can literally take you back to, if you say to him in 1989 you wrestled this guy at this, he can take you back there. He can literally tell you everything about the arena, about who was in the room with him at the time he was getting changed. He can take you right back, and he's got so many great stories. So Bischoff and Shane Douglas were two. Buff was great. DDP was awesome. But yeah, I suppose Bischoff and Shane Douglas would be my two favorite ones.
Yeah. Do you find that reaching out to people challenging? Because I know I do sometimes. Just trying to get the response and stuff.
Yeah, it's just sometimes I think there's a fine line between constantly reaching out to them and then just letting them, respond when they can. I do find it difficult sometimes. I just sometimes want to respond, even if it's no. Just tell me no. Then I can just take you off the list. You don't have to worry about it. But I get it though. They are busy. They've got a lot of stuff going on. But I don't necessarily find it hard reaching out to them. I just find it. I would just rather just get a response rather than them saying.
Literally. Someone who I don't know. I was very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time was Jacob Fatu.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably one of the biggest. In fact, it is the biggest guest I have had on, and I'm really grateful for that. Right place at the right time, right moment. Released from MLW. Well, not released, but contract expired, and then reached out to him, and just amazing. And
it was a good interview as well. Yeah, it was a good interview, and plus now. Look where he is now.
That's really true. I've been very fortunate this year to have 3 members of the NOIE Fatu family. Hopefully, trying to get more coming up.
Be good for you to get the bloodline. You're starting the bloodline tree yourself.
Literally, I'm hoping to get Zilla on soon, so that would be
cool.
It's just schedules, trying to fit and stuff in time zones.
Yeah, and plus, we don't know. Is he the next one?
Could be, or it could be Lance.
Yeah, or is it Hukuleo? Another one in just left
Yeah.
New Japan. He's another one.
He's another one that's left. So talk to me about Ignite Wrestling.
Oh, I love Ignite. This was really Andy more than anything. So we got talking like we obviously we're a podcast, we podcast and stuff, and it was Andy was always like, look, what can we do differently? What can we do something that may be out there, but we don't hear enough of it? And he went to an Ignite show last February, and he come back and he said, look, I've got this idea. There's a Chris at Ignite or CJ Carter at Ignite, the promoter would like to work with us. Like, are you interested? And initially I was a bit coy. I was like, okay, well, I need to see it myself. I mean, I know you're waxing lyrical on it and I trust your judgment, but I need to come and see it myself. So the next show was in April, and we'd had some discussions prior to that about what if we done a sponsored show. So we worked with them. We would sponsor the show, but it would be like a joint effort. We went there in April of last year. Went there. Chris welcomed us with open arms. The team welcomed us up with open arms. It was just such a great place to be. But even before the show had started, I'd already was like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll work with them. But as you know, you can, as a wrestling fan, when you start to think about doing your own show, you've got these wacky ideas in your head, and you're starting to try and think about these things. And we were saying to CJ about, oh, we could do this to hype up the event. We could do that. We can hire a studio and get all this stuff done. And it was just like, pump the brakes, boys. Like, this isn't WWE. This is just an independent promotion that, we want to try and grow it with you and help, and help each other out. And that was really good advice, because you do get a bit excited. You do get a bit carried away with things that you can do because you're watching wrestling so much that you pick up these ideas. But essentially, then there was a discussion around, well, we're doing the show in July. Is there something we can announce in July that can basically move that partnership forward? And again, it was kind of Andy that come to me and said, well, what about if we create a championship? And again, and I was like, I love that idea. I was like, that's really cool. I've never, again, do podcasts have championships out there? I expect they do. They probably do. I don't know. But it was something that was quite unique, quite niche. I was like, yeah, run it by CJ, and if he's welcoming to the idea, we'll do it. So that's what we done. We done the show in July. We sold that out, and on the July show, we announced the TurnBuckle Championship would be debuting in the September show, which it did, and our champion is still the same as of recording to this day.
Yeah, I mean, quite an achievement itself, isn't it? To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, this is where Ignite, though. I mean, Ignite have to be on board with this. They can't. Chris, he could have had that show as much of a success it was, and he could have decided, what, we won't do the title, or we'll do the title, but you don't have to necessarily be a part of that. We'll just sort it all out. But he's welcomed us in with open arms. He's we give him ideas of who we would like the champion to face, and if it's possible when it happens, it happens. If not, he runs a night, or he may say, well, actually, what about this person or that person? I'm like, yeah, okay, that works. And it's just one of those things. But some promoters don't do that. Some promoters are very closed off. Yeah. And Chris CJ has been very sort of, he may have started closed off because it's his baby. Ignite is his. It's his promotion. But he's slowly opened up his arms and now welcomed us fully on board to, especially with a title. I mean, he takes care of everything else. It's just the TurnBuckle title that we deal with, but he listens to the ideas, and sometimes he agrees, sometimes he doesn't, sometimes he tweaks it. But that's the benefit of having somebody that's been in wrestling that knows his stuff.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you would like to face for the TurnBuckle Championship next, if you could choose?
Oh, what a question. Well, I suppose it depends, as we got a show. Obviously, our show's next week. The sponsored show, the joint show with Ignite is next week, and I don't know if that championship's going to be on the same guy. So it would kind of depend on who's the champion after the show. So I'll do it both ways. If Mike retains the championship, the thing with Mike is we've tried to give him opponents that are totally different in many ways. So the first one Obviously, we had Will Cruz, which was like an Andre the Giant type thing. Mike's a strong guy. Will Cruz is a giant. The second one was Eddie Dennis, which was a massive, guy with WWE experience. So really experienced guy into that. So that was that one. And the third one was James Ellis, who was a great up and comer, but is a great technical wrestler. So he gave Mike another problem in terms of his, and a bit more experience in wrestling, a technical guy. So if Mike retains, I would love, and we couldn't, unfortunately, he had to pull out of this show as well, but I'd love him to take on Dries, a man like Dries, just because he is so, they've both got so much charisma, and I don't think Ignite would be ready for that. We did try to have that, and unfortunately, Dries couldn't make it to the show in February, so we got Eddie Dennis in to replace. So it'd be one I'd like to do. If Mark wins it, I mean, first off, I think I'll just walk out of the arena if Mike wins. If Mark wins, because Mark has been a pain in my backside for that title ever since we announced it. He wanted it. He didn't want to win it. He just wanted me to give it to him. So if he wins it, Mark is exceptionally talented, and he's now being rightfully recognised on some of the bigger companies in the UK for sure. I mean, Progress and Rev Pro really love Mark and Kieran as a tag team, but Mark on his own also is a very, very good wrestler. For him, I don't know. I would like him against RKJ if we could ever make that happen, perhaps. And assuming Mark wins the title next week, then RKJ would be my pick for Mark.
That could be a good one. Good matchup.
Yeah, we would like it. We'd have to speak to CJ and see if we could make it happen.
Never say never.
That's right. This is wrestling after all.
That's literally. So 2 years into the podcast business, and what you've achieved in a short span of time is, without a shadow of a doubt, amazing. We're 6 months into the year. What is the rest of the year looking like for Hitting the TurnBuckle podcast?
Do you know, this is the time where I start planning for next year. So it's like, okay, I need to have ideas. I need to start thinking of like, what are we going to focus on? Obviously, it's a bit difficult, not so much difficult, but it's a bit different because there's less people at the moment. Obviously, we've got Fiona that's still here. She does the NWA stuff. So the NWA stuff, we're going to kick on with that with myself and Fiona. We're going to try and I've got some ideas about what I want to do with that. That's going to be forefront. TNA obviously is, again, the next phase. We don't know where Bound for Glory is going to be yet. So that, who knows, could that be in the UK? It's about trying to think of something different to do next year. There's something different. We sponsor wrestlers. We have sponsored promotions, Progress being the same. But it's like, what I've got to sit down and now start thinking, well, what is next? So I'm going to use the next month or two to start thinking about basically 2025.
If you could pick one guest that you haven't had already, apart from Adam Copeland, who you already said for AEW, who would you like to have that you've not had the opportunity to interview yet?
Realistically or unrealistic?
We'll do both.
Okay, so realistically, Kevin Nash.
Okay.
It may cost some money, but Kevin Nash. Unrealistically, I say unrealistically because I don't think it'd ever happen. But Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, why not?
That would be a good one.
Yeah, probably cost a lot of money, but I'd happily, if it was ever a chance, I would definitely take it.
Mark Calloway, think of the stories you can ask him and he could say.
Yeah, I can imagine there's a load of stories that he could tell, but yeah,
that would try and cram in everything that you want to say to him.
That sometimes is half the problem. If you've only got a limited time with somebody, it is literally how much. Like when we do the interviews for TNA and AEW, they are limited. You get a short time span, and you have to, and you've got to get their promotion bits in as well, and you'd have to, but. It is that's the point when you really have to narrow it down. So if you only got, say, an hour with The Undertaker, what could, how can you cram so much into an hour with him?
The Undertaker, been a big fan of his since I was little as well. I grew up watching him. The matches that he had, we'll say the 4 matches that he had at WrestleMania with, even the last one after Triple H with Punk, the 5 matches before everything went downhill was amazing.
He's just he's one of those guys. They're a very rare breed, but he's one of those guys that just, no matter how old he gets, and I know he's had a few, as you said, he went downhill, but he still pulled out his final match with AJ Styles was still absolutely incredible. It's just a real shame that it didn't end. It wasn't in the ring, but obviously we know why that wasn't going to happen. But I would have loved to have seen that match in the ring.
So would I. Him and Styles could have done or mixed it up without a shadow of a doubt.
Would have been magic.
Is Dave Meltzer someone you would like to interview?
Meltzer, look, he's like Marmite. You know, you love him or you hate him. You know, I don't. Look, yeah, why not? I mean, we would have. I'm sure we'd have differences of opinion. That's for sure. I don't doubt it. Funny enough, I think he's blocked us on social media. So I think so. I know Andy doesn't like him at all. Look, yeah, if he was willing, I would be willing. But I'm sure things would be, you know, as I say, he would agree on stuff. We wouldn't agree on stuff. But that's the beauty of wrestling. As long as you do it in a respectful manner, you're rightful to have your opinion. What I don't like and what I don't hate at all is this whole tribalism stuff that goes on right now. And you see it. It's rife across, you know. Look, if you don't like something, fine. You don't have to like AEW. You don't have to like WWE. Or you don't have to like,
yourself, innit?
Yeah, you don't have to like TNA. But what you've got to respect and appreciate is the fact that there is so much wrestling and there is so much opportunity for people. If it doesn't work out in one company, they can go to another. We've had years of it just being WWE, and that was bad. So the fact that we've got 4 other companies or that you can go to, just let them enjoy it, and let the fans of AEW enjoy AEW. Let the fans of WWE enjoy WWE. Let the fans that enjoy all of it enjoy it.
Yeah, and you know, I completely agree with you with what you've just said. So it's like one thing that I disagree with what he does is the amount of wrestlers that he's not give 5-star matches to.
Yeah.
So for example, like Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
Who could have loads.
Oh, there's loads. There is loads. I mean, Angle Michaels is an easy one. Michaels Undertaker is another easy one that you could.
Yeah.
Why? I'm sure he's got a reason for it, and that's his opinion. And you respect his. You don't have to agree with it, but you can respect it and understand why he didn't do it, and that would be fine. I'm sure he has said in the past why he didn't give it 5 stars, but I'd like to hear it myself.
Yeah, so would I. Basically.
So, Dave, if you're listening, one of us would happily interview you.
Definitely. What would you say is the biggest what if in professional wrestling?
Oh man, there's a couple. Funny enough, I've got the blue meanie on soon, and it's like, you know, what if ECW was would ECW still be on the air if it was around now with the way society is? The biggest what ifs is like, what if WCW had won the war? What if there never was a war to begin with? What would wrestling look like now if A, WCW had won it, or B, they were still together? Would there be an AEW? Would there be a TNA? That's the biggest what if for me.
Literally. I agree with what you're saying there. Who is your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling?
Oh, geez. Taker's in there for longevity, for the way that he does his character, the way that he's, you know, changed the character to maybe change what he needed to do. When he felt like a change was needed, he done it. For in-ring stuff, Kurt Angle was definitely, you know, beyond the doubt. Controversial one here, and he's probably gonna, you know, but I would maybe not have him on the Rushmore, but have him close, was Chris Benoit for his wrestling ability. For his, you know, obviously what he done outside of that is ridiculous, and you know, whatever. But for wrestling, he wouldn't be on there, but he'd be close. I don't necessarily liked him in the ring, but for what he done for wrestling was Hulk Hogan, because look, we were all growing up at the time that Hulkamania was running wild, and you know, you have to. I don't see how he's not in there, even though it's a big thing, because you kind of depends on what you base your Mount Rushmore on. I would base it on the industry, what if they change the industry, what they've done for the industry. But some people base it just on wrestling ability, and then that's a different Mount Rushmore, if you understand. Steve Austin. Again, because he, you know, WWE and Vince McMahon obviously had developed the Stone Cold character, but it has to be right for the individual, and he fit the character down to a T. So Stone Cold would be in there, and I think there's one more. left, and that's the trick. That's a difficult one. I'll be a bit biased. I was another big fan of his growing up, and I'm going to say Triple H.
Fair enough, I can see that.
And what
It's
he's doing
amazing
now,
what they're doing now.
yeah, I was going to say what he's doing now. He's fantastic. So, but yeah, that would be my 5.
I like that. Some big names that's changed their history over the time and the years.
Yeah, and some ones that are changing the shape of wrestling now.
I would agree. Triple H, how do you think he's doing a good job?
Absolutely. It's never going to be easy. I mean, to replace Vince, I mean, what he did again, what Vince did, we don't know the ins and outs, and this is easy to speculate, and that's gone to court, and we'll see what happens. But what Triple H has done now is he's taken those leashes off, like we've seen the crossover with TNA. Who would have thought WWE would open up and say, yeah, come on in, come on, let's have you in, let's have you guys in, let's have the guys from Japan in. I know they've done something over there, I think recently, or doing something over there as well. That would never have happened. I don't think that would have ever happened under Vince. So the fact that's TKO as well. It's not just Triple H, it's TKO.
Yeah. I mean, look who he's working with at the moment this year. GCW, Josh Barnett, All Japan Pro Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Noah, TNA, and that's just to name a few.
And would that have happened under Vince? I don't think it would have. Personally, I don't think it would have. So that is Triple H, that is Nick Khan, that is maybe even TKO as well. But what they're doing is trying to find new ways to get more eyes on the product and get the product out there. And that's why people like Logan Paul have got championships, even though I hate to say it, is extremely talented as a wrestler. But that's another reason why, because you've got the Prime partnership as well.
You have as well, and I see what you mean with what you said. Prime partnership is the internet sensation that Logan Paul is. Yeah. Stuff like that's unbelievable. So you mentioned, obviously, for hitting the TurnBuckle podcast, you've got 2025. You're focusing on that. But what's planned for the next coming months that you've probably not announced, or that you could announce that you've just got stuff planned, guests lined up? What's next?
Well, the first thing is the show next week. I'm kind of I'm kind of getting that done. So we've got the show with Ignite next week. Buckle Up 2. Yeah. That's kind of at the forefront. Yeah. Once Buckle Up's finished, we've got the Blue Meanie coming up as well. EC3 will be coming on at some point. That's just another one who's just diaries insane, much like Jordan Grace, and that's not through TNA. So that's another one that's bubbling under the surface, but that's not necessarily agreed as such, but it's kind of near enough there with it. But again, it's diaries. But other than that, it's just literally my main focus is getting the show out of the way next week with Ignite first. Then I can have a sit down and decide, what do I want to do for the remaining 5 months of the year. Interviews will happen, and they can sometimes happen at a drop of a hat. But it's then focusing on what's next for the podcast, and that will start after Buckle Up on next Sunday. Yeah,
and like we mentioned, you've been in 2 years. 2023 was a good year. 2024 has been another great year for you and the guys over at TurnBuckle. 2025 is just going to be even better. You've recently hit 3K subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah,
which that's a milestone itself. You're going to get more and more popular, and the things that you're doing is incredible. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the product and stuff.
Thanks.
Inspiration for myself, I started mine in 2023, just as an odd little hobby. I had Alex here, and then I had Bobby Fish, and I had the odd person. But then since December, I decided to hit it full throttle, and I've been very fortunate with some of the guests that I've had.
Yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes, like, I didn't know how much this would, it does consume a lot of my time, but you do have to put the graft in. I mean, Matt Cardona was one of those ones that gave us advice, and he was like, if you say you're gonna do it, do it. Don't just sit there and dwell on it. If you're gonna say you're gonna do weekly reviews, guess what? You got to do them. So that was a bit of advice, but yeah, both of us, look, we've had success so far. If I had a target, like if I say by the end of the year, I would like to get YouTube up to 5K by December. It's a big ask, and I can't promise it's going to happen. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee anything, but that would be my target for the remainder of the year. Get the YouTube up to 5K.
Yeah, mine's to hit 1K, 203 away.
You will. You will.
Hope so. Hope so.
You will.
I try to get like 4 guests a month. No, within
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a guest a week you could put out technically for content.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, one just gone up like 30 minutes ago that I scheduled with Mike Quickenbush.
Mhm.
So that's up. I had 2 days. I had Nightshade 2 days ago. Who's going to be on one of your shows?
She's going to be on next week. She's Sapphire Reed's mystery partner against her wishes. She didn't want to be, but she wants to beat up Luna and Artemis. So that's the way she got in.
Yeah, and then I had, who did I have recently? I had the Dynamite Kid's daughter, Bronwyn Billington.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. That was a good one.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a good pull because Bronwyn, I reached out to her last year and she's like, oh, I used to do podcasts, but now I don't. And then she saw one that I had with Tara Zep,
Yeah.
and she was like, she just watched it. She said she watched it while getting ready and heard it, and then she thought, oh, well, I'll go on and this and that. And, it turned out to be an amazing interview, and I'm quite happy that I did it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes it's not always those. Like, I know she's in wrestling, but sometimes it's like those different ones like that. I always find like doing things like this with other podcasters great fun.
So do I.
Like Ringside Renaissance over in America, I've done one with them recently. It's so good to have a chat. And I think they're coming back on to do a top 10 with us soon. So we're going to bring back the top 10 series, which is, I love that. It's a ton of fun. But I'm going to get more people on, maybe leaving like yourself, if you can find some time to come on and
I'd love to.
Yeah, we'll get that sort. So I'm going to bring that back as well. So that's going to be, I love that series. So that's good. But yeah, I love these type of things. And yeah, sometimes the best podcasts are not even with the wrestlers. It's with people around business.
Yeah. Like Bronwyn, it was nice to hear stories about her dad, even with stuff what happened. It's just nice to hear stories, her British roots, She was on about Tom, Tom who recently debuted against Dax.
Yes.
How he's the split image of her father, and just how he moves and stuff like that. He's killing it in Japan. Just stuff like that. I thought, I didn't grow up watching the Dynamite Kid, but then as I started growing up, I knew who he was and I knew matches and stuff like that. So it's kind of, with me being British and he's kind of half British, it was kind of like, you know what I mean? It all comes around full circle.
Yeah, it does. And that is a great one for stories. Sting's son was one for us not long after the retirement match.
That's amazing.
That was incredible. And now he's training to be a wrestler. So
that's mad.
Like, who would have thought that? But yeah, he was a great one, just again for the stories, for just everything, and just because he was a part of the show as well, part of that last match, and he was in there in the lead up to it as well. So that was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, so if obviously, like we mentioned, 2 years in, and we've just gone down memory lane. Have you got any advice, for example, whether that's to myself or anyone who's watching, who wants to do a podcast or stuff like that, or how to go about things?
Yeah, if you want to do it, just do it. Don't ever be. So Dave, prime example. Dave, one of our co-hosts, he's a prime example of this. I'd known Dave 13 years. Again, a bit like Andy. It was really weird. We've known each other so long, we've hardly ever seen each other until we started this. And we got about 6 months into me being on the podcast, and Dave was always messaging me, and he was like, "Seen your podcast. I really love it." And then we had agreed to meet up in London. We met up, and he was like, "I've got all the podcast stuff, but A, I'm from the Midlands, and I don't think people are going to like my accent. And B, I've got zero confidence." So I took that away. I said, just leave that with me, Dave. Let me just go and have a chat with Andy and see if we can do something, perhaps, get you on and see what happens. And spoke to Andy. He was like, yeah, do the AEW stuff with him. So we did. And Dave is a prime example of someone who's naturally gifted at it, but just had zero confidence. And I just said to him, look, if your ball's up, I do it in one take. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake. I laugh it off on the podcast. That's it. And I'll probably make a joke out of you making a mistake. And you, like when I try and pronounce a Japanese name on AEW, he finds it hilarious because me trying to pronounce, Konosuke Takeshita or people like that sometimes at the start was very difficult. Yeah. So, I said to him, just go with the flow. And it was easy for him. But if someone wants to do it and is worried, just do it. Don't worry about what people think. You're going to get negatives and positive people out there anyway. As long as you enjoy it, just do it. in terms of like podcasters itself, just, you know, if you're reaching out to talent, just be respectful to them. Don't be annoyed if they ask for a fee. You are taking up their time after all. Some people don't, some people do. And if you don't want to pay the fee, just be respectful back and say, thank you very much. It's not something I can do right now, but I'll be in touch when I can, and just be respectful to them. And you've got to understand that they're asking for a fee for a reason. So that's really, and just, you know, just keep on doing what guys are doing, because you're out there. It's like for yourself, you're out there doing it. You've got in some great interviews, you're putting out the content, you had your shot with TNA, and that went well from all intents and purposes, from what I saw. I don't see why you won't get another one of those opportunities, and hopefully that will come and you'll get more. You will. Listen, it might not be straight away. It took a few months before we got another chance with the system. So look, if it happens, and if it doesn't happen for a while, don't be disheartened by it. It could be, there could be a fundamental load of reasons why, but it will happen again, and when it does, you'll be ready for it. So yeah, just take the rough with the smooth, take the bumps and all together, but ultimately just keep on doing what you guys are doing, because you're doing a great job.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, especially coming from you, you know, who I watch and support, and obviously we speak the odd time, and
Yep.
you know, I get my content out, or try to, and stuff. I've not had as much guests, you know, compared to you, but it's just, you know, working and stuff like that, and it's trying to find the time.
That is it.
Especially, I think you know what I do, don't you?
Yeah.
Especially with that, it's like trying to get the time, and then it's trying to get them on, then it's reaching out. Like I said, it's just, I appreciate it, especially with, and what you've just said with some of the guests that I've had is quite good. So I do appreciate that, especially coming from you. So thank you.
No problem, but yeah, just keep on doing it. It will come. And like you say, with guests, I've done podcasts at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning some days, like especially with the NWA guys, because they're based out in like Tennessee, or some of them are about Pacific Coast time, so it's like 7-8 hours. So we've had to just balance it, and then I'll be selective. I'll be selective on days. There'll be days that I can definitely do that, and there'll be days that I wouldn't touch because of work. As you say, when you work, you've got to put. Unfortunately, this isn't our full-time job yet. It could ever be in the future, who knows? But why it's not the full-time job, and why it's not bringing in the money, we have to focus on bringing the food to the table, so to speak.
That's really true. So it's baby steps in it. So like, look at Chris Van Lee. I can't say his name. Chris Van Vilt. Yeah, for example, he started off on interviews and radios and stuff like that. And now look at his interviews once a week or once every 2 weeks, and his YouTube channel is amazing.
He's brilliant. I mean, I think he's had 1 billion views across his platforms now, and look, he's the benchmark. I mean, if you really want to do it, if that's something that you really want to do, he's the man to look at. He's the man that does it, and he's so great with it as well. And yeah, I've seen some. I to be honest, before that into podcasts, I never watched him or listened to him. Now I do, and Chris Van Vliet's one that I will always watch. A, because of the guests, and B, because you know that guy has done his research. You can tell with the questions that he asked that he has spent time. I'd love to know how much time he spends researching the guests. I mean, it's not just as simple as you got Rey Mysterio on. He went into that. I think he had done one with The Undertaker, and he asked The Undertaker about a question, and The Undertaker was, "Oh, you've done your homework." You know, that's the kind of stuff that
that's what they want.
Yeah, exactly that. He's so good at it. So yeah, Chris, I'd love to have one. I'd like to have on the show, actually. Chris Van Vliet. I'd love to interview him.
He's someone who I'd love to have on. I've recently reached out to, you know, the Mr. Santi Zap, and you know, all the other ones like that. Like we.
Yep.
Their reactions and stuff like that, and their content, what they do. I like that as well.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, that's the sort of the streaming stuff. I love that. I love the streaming stuff because I like it. What I like about it as well is not that, is I like the TikTok versions where they put up like a 2, because I'm not one of these ones that could watch it like 2-3 hours. I couldn't do like a live watch with them or anything like that. It's just not. I study wrestling and I have to do my own notes for reviews. But when they put up those little snippets of them reacting to things that happen, I love that stuff. And yeah, again, like you say, I'd like them. I wouldn't mind them to have interviewing them myself, just to have that. We have a specialist series called Ringside View, where we don't necessarily talk to the wrestlers, we talk to the people behind it. Or we had a belt collector on and things like that. So That's the sort of thing. I'd love to talk to them about their streaming stuff, because and also what advice they could give us, because it's a different type of advice, but it'd be interesting.
Any advice you can get from anyone is really appreciated. Isn't it? So it's like I've had you as a channel, you got 3K views, so that's big. Do you know what I mean? In people's eyes, so that's quite good. So we will round it off with an inspirational message from you, Adam. What have you got for us?
Inspirational message. You know what, guys? You know, inspirational message is just like, don't ever think you can't do anything, because the only person that's stopping you from doing stuff is you. And just have that belief. Like I said to Dave before, when he picked the first time we done an AEW thing, just let it happen, let it out, roll with the punches. You make a mistake, you make a mistake. We all do. It's, you know, if you really want to do something, just do it, because you can do it. And the only one preventing you from doing something is yourself.
Yeah, I like that one. And you know what you've just said is true. Always believe.
Yeah, you're the only person that's stopping you from doing it. Nobody else, just you.
Literally. Other than that, Adam, that's a wrap. Thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed this, going down memory lane, and looking forward to what's coming up with you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Just get ready for me to send you an invite for a top 10 show, and you have to, and I'll give you the brief of what we're looking at, and then you can come on and give us your top 10 of whatever we decide to choose.
Definitely, I'll look forward to it. Something I'm interested in doing, and like I said, big fan of your work, and 5K will be hitting this year.
Let's hope so. Let's say it will. Exactly right. Yeah, you got to go up, and it will hit this year.
Definitely, man. Thank you anyway.
No worries, Jordan. Thank you. Take care.
You too, mate.